Good afternoon, and welcome to the monthly webinar of the Western Center for Metropolitan Extension and Research for June. My name is Martha Aitken. I'm a Senior Associate for Metropolitan Extension with Washington State University, and I am pleased to be your host for this broadcast. The Western Center was established by the Western Extension Directors Association with funding from the extension programs of the University of Alaska Fairbanks, University of California, Colorado State University, University of Idaho, Oregon State University, and Washington State University, who hosts the center. Before we get started, if you haven't used GoToWebinar before, I'd like to go over a few useful features. The webinar will work best on your computer if you close other applications while you participate. On the menu bar, the blue screen button lets you toggle between a full screen and partial screen. If you want to view the webinar at full screen, you'll want to toggle back to enter a question in the question pod. The orange arrow opens and hides your control panel. You may enter your questions into the question pod at any time. However, we will wait until the end of the program to ask questions of our presenter. Our webinar today is being recorded for later viewing, including all questions posted in the question pod. The Western Center was established to increase the internal capacity of extension programs to address metropolitan issues and to elevate the stature and value of cooperative extension to external metropolitan audiences. The overarching goal of the Western Center is to help extension better align programs with the needs, issues, and interests of their metropolitan constituency. The center believes that to be successful, extension professionals need essential skills to thrive in today's diverse and complex metropolitan communities, such as the ability to work across generations and the skills to work within multi-stakeholder collaborations. To reach this goal, the center provides professional development opportunities through staff exchanges, webinars, and workshops. The center has a two-pronged research agenda to conduct research on effective metropolitan organizational and staffing models and best practices in programming, delivery, and evaluation, and to explore emerging metropolitan issues so that land-grant universities can help communities make informed decisions and develop sound and equitable policies. So before I introduce our speaker today, we would like to know what experience you have working with veterans. So I am going to launch a couple of polls. So our first question is, have you ever worked with veterans? And if you would please select one answer. I'll give you a moment here. Okay, it looks like everyone has answered, and I'm going to share these. And for the benefit of our presenter who can't see these answers just yet, have you ever worked with veterans? 29% said yes currently, 18% yes previously, 41% said no, but I'm considering it, and 12% said no. Okay, so I'm going to get to our next question. The question is, have you ever worked directly with the Veterans Administration? And if you could please select one answer. Okay, looks like you've all answered. I'm going to share those. Well, this is interesting. 10% said yes currently, 15% yes previously, 25% said no, but I'm considering it, and the whole 50% said no, never thought of doing it. So thank you all very much for participating in those. And now it gives me great pleasure to introduce today's presentation, Reaching Urban Veterans Through Urban Horticulture with Jan Zentek. Jan Zentek is the Senior Program Coordinator for Agriculture and Resource Management and the County Extension Department Head in Essex County, New Jersey. Jan has worked previously in community development programs in North Carolina and Kentucky. He served as a Peace Corps forestry volunteer in Ecuador, where he worked to establish a native tree nursery for local reforestation efforts and helped farmers introduce virus-resistant citrus rootstock to local lemon and lime production. Jan earned his MS in Natural Resource Sociology from the University of Washington in the College of Forest Resources. He began his career at Rutgers Cooperative Extension in 2001 when he was hired as director of the Rutgers Urban Gardening Program. He manages the Rutgers Master Gardener Program in Essex County and collaborates with Extension colleagues in 4-H and Family and Community Health Sciences to provide programs to the diverse communities of Essex County. Jan is married and has 2 children, both of whom graduated from Rutgers. And when he isn't busy repairing his 120-year-old farmhouse, he relaxes by tending 30 colonies of honeybees. So Jan has told me that they are currently under a severe storm warning, and so hopefully he will be able to make it through his presentation. So Jan, it's great to have you with us, and welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Martha, and thank you to the Washington State University for inviting me to give this presentation and to talk about work that has consumed me for the last 7 or 8 years, working with veterans. And I appreciated the poll to start off. It gives me a sense of some of the experiences that you in the audience will bring to this discussion. I hope to share my ideas and our experiences here at Rutgers with working with veterans and to learn from what you are doing out in your counties across the country. So I'm going to give a little bit of a background about the program and its history, and then I'd like to focus on the actual work that we're doing with the veterans. I was telling Martha before, it feels a bit like I'm singing in the shower. I usually have more interaction with my audience, and this is my first webinar, so I ask your indulgence. So, first question that I ask people is, why would you choose to work with veterans? And for me, it's an important question because it motivates the work that we choose to do in our county, which is a completely urban county in the state of New Jersey. I think we have a moral obligation to the veterans. For the past 15 years, national policies have led to military actions around the globe, and we are at this present day still in need of military men and women who are acting out on military policy. So we continue to produce veterans, and I think we have as a country a moral obligation. So that's the first point that I think we need to keep in mind. The other is, in working with my colleague Dr. Amy Rowe, we've looked at the role of extension programs working with veterans, and there are programs that we have with military families through 4-H, but there are a few extension programs that are directly targeting veterans, and so it's an underserved audience. But we have the experience training adults for new careers and changes in the economy, and yet we don't have very many programs targeted towards veterans. So I think as an extension professional, we should be looking to broaden the audiences that we serve. And the striking number for me is that there are 7 million veterans since the first Gulf War in '91. There's about 3.5 million just since 2001 with the post 9/11 mobilizations. So we have a pretty large body of individuals who've served our country, are returning and trying to fit back into their communities. And as research shows, many of the veterans who return from active duty military action have difficulty readjusting to civilian life and reconnecting with their communities. And this is a disheartening number. There are 4.5 million disabled veterans, and just in the 1 year between 2014 and 2015, which is the most recent data that I've been able to find, we've had an increase of 600,000 disabled veterans return to the United States, relying on services. Not all of them are being served by the VA. We're learning from our experience at Rutgers that not all veterans seek out the assistance of the Veterans Administration for whatever reasons they have. And we're finding that one of the benefits of our program has been we've been able to help reconnect some veterans to the VA and to the services that are available to them through the VA. There was a recent discussion about post-traumatic stress disorder, and scientists are now considering it a physical injury and not just a mental or emotional problem, but it actually has its roots in physiology, and there's a chance that this assessment of disabled veterans is going to increase as a result of that change in our understanding of post-traumatic stress disorder. The other reason I think we have an obligation to work with the veterans is that they are experiencing higher rates of unemployment. Just as a few years ago, New Jersey was second in the nation in the rate of its unemployment amongst veterans. We're now 9th. The economy is generally improving, and so it's not that there have been any specific programs to help veterans deal with their unemployment, become employed, but just as the general economy has improved, so has the unemployment figures for veterans, but they still lag behind the general population. And one of the challenges that we found in meeting, when talking with our veterans, some of whom are young men who were just out of high school or a year or two out of high school, removed from high school when they enlisted, is that their military experience does not translate well into the private sector, and that they didn't have very much private sector experience before they went into the military. So it's hard for an employer to make an assessment of an individual veteran's ability to perform a job. As I mentioned, the translation of military skills is not often translated directly into civilian work. The VA works with veterans to assess their military career and translate it into civilian equivalents so that a veteran can apply for a job and build upon the military experience as a foundation for his or her application for the civilian job. But it is difficult. It's a lot of the work that's done in the military is not readily apparent to the veteran themselves about how it applies in the civilian market, and that's an obstacle that some are unable to overcome. And a scary number is that 64% of returning veterans report a difficult transition back into civilian life. This is, many of the active duty military have lived under stressful conditions, to say the least, and some become addicted to it. Some, the thrill of the battle and their military action and coming back to civilian life, it's boring. We've had experience in our own program with young men who have been unable to adjust to the low-key nature of our training program and the lack of excitement. They are, when they became bored by our program, that boredom manifests itself in aggressive acts towards each other and frustration with the project. And so it was a surprise for us in a job training program to also realize that the job training we were offering wasn't enough. And we didn't fully appreciate the difficulty of taking somebody out of a military context where they've been at risk of losing their life and coming back to what we consider a safe environment. Consequently, returning veterans are also having a difficulty reconnecting to their families and their communities. They are struggling to make sense of what they've experienced in the military if they've been in active duty, and many do not wish to discuss their experiences, which makes it hard for them to connect to their families or their communities, people who are generally interested and sincerely interested in helping the returning veterans. So it's an inability to express themselves that is hindering reconnection to their communities. Our training program, we thought, was bringing a structure back to a relatively low-pressure structured environment in which veterans would be able to relearn or learn for the first time classroom skills. What we noticed in the applicants to our program, many had a high school degree, diploma, that's required for military service, or a GED. And they didn't think the veterans had not thought too much about their careers after the military academically. And some folks have told us that they didn't think of themselves as students. They didn't like being in the classroom. And so our program has a combination of lectures and hands-on, a lot of field work. We provide over 1,000 hours of training, and more than half of that's in the field with applying the theory that they learned in the classroom. So when I was developing this talk, I dug a bit into where veterans are spread throughout the country. As I mentioned, New Jersey is an urban state. My county is one of the most urban in the state, and we have a lot of unemployed veterans in an urban community. And I was just wondering how New Jersey compared to the rest of the country. And so the most recent data we have is for 2015, and this comes from an office at the VA. And I think for you all in the audience, they might want to think about where your particular states are in terms of the amount of veteran population that you have in your communities. So the biggest states are Texas, Florida, California in terms of total number of veterans. We have in the Northeast, New York and Pennsylvania. Ohio is relatively high. New Jersey is the next step down. So we have between 350 and 550,000 veterans in the state of New Jersey. And the demographics of the population of veterans is changing. We have a lot of people who've gone into the service obviously since 9/11. And I think it's important for us to understand the aging of the veteran population. And so there are a large segment of the military veterans who are 25 years old or under. And again, two of the largest states with that segment of the veteran population are California and Texas. And you get Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia have between 7,500 and 14,000 veterans below the age of 25. New Jersey has the next tier down, between 3,000 and 5,000. That's a significant, I think that fact is significant because we're going to be working with these veterans for the remainder of their life. They have a life expectancy of 50 to 60 years ahead of them, and their challenges, what we learned from our experience with veterans from previous wars, is that as veterans age, their need for services increases. And the last demographic diagram or map that I have shows the percentage of veteran population changes by state. And what's really interesting, it seems like the Northeast, the old Rust Belt, and California, and even Florida are losing veterans. That's actually a loss of the mortality of the older veterans from World War II and the Korean War. So we have that is. So there's still a fairly large population of veterans, but in some areas of the country where we had older populations from World War II, historically, we're losing them at a higher rate just through the natural processes of biology. So if we expect to have veterans who are in need of services from the VA or other agencies for 50 or 60 years, it seemed like a good idea to me that we begin engaging with them and trying to match cooperative extension programs. I can't really say that I discovered this on my own. I was aware of horticultural therapy, and I'm sure many of you are, if you're not already providing a horticultural therapy program. The research shows its benefits to all individuals, and it is certainly helpful to veterans. The VA is actually interested and has approached Rutgers on a number of occasions about instituting a horticultural therapy program at the VA facilities in New Jersey. And in fact, we are currently through grant funding running a horticultural therapy program at a residential facility in western New Jersey. But the money hasn't been there in the past, and it's been a challenge. So we've been relying on volunteers to bring a gardening program to the VA. And the benefits then for the veterans are that if they're older, the physical activity of the gardening improves their flexibility, their endurance, their strength. The fact that the veterans gather and work together is an important skill to master and practice. It involves being able to be social with other people and communicate, and that helps people reconnect. But like I said, as I implied, I didn't discover this by myself. Our program started in 2008 because a Rutgers Master Gardener who happened to be a veteran came to me and said that he was interested in starting a gardening program at the VA hospital in East Orange, New Jersey. He went to the VA administration. And the VA has a new approach, a relatively new approach, in helping veterans deal with their different disabilities or needs. And as part of this veterans rehab, he was encouraged to start a gardening program. And it was his persistence in pursuing a gardening program that led the VA to contact my office in 2008. And I had a meeting with the hospital administration where they discussed a gardening class for 8 to 15 veterans who were helping maintain the hospital grounds. And it was a simple little program, an evening class, 10 sessions of about an hour and a half each. And at the end, the veterans had established a raised bed and covered it. They scavenged resources from around the hospital site, including painter's drop cloths, and they created a little hoop house, and they wound up growing collards and kale and spinach through the winter in New Jersey in a courtyard. And the hospital administration was pretty happy with the outcome. It didn't cost them anything, and it kept some of the veterans busy. And it went on for a couple of years. And then in 2009, Dr. Amy Rowe joined our staff, and her expertise is in water resource management, stormwater management, and she brought that component to our gardening class and became a little more formal gardening, landscaping and stormwater management program. We had structures, 2 lectures a week, where 12 to 15 veterans attended the lectures, and that was followed up by applying the theory in the lectures in horticulture and stormwater management to the property at the VA. And it was then that the VA took more notice of our work, because they have an obligation as a federal facility to manage the stormwater on their site, and they were paying other companies, outside contractors, to come help develop plans and change the landscape to facilitate the improvement of stormwater management. For a brief moment, there was a sense in the VA that it made sense to train the veterans to do this, because at the VA they have a program called Certified Work Therapy, or Compensated Work Therapy. The idea is that veterans need to have new skills, and the VA would train them, compensate them while they're doing the work to master these new skills. And then at the end of the training program, at the end of the eligibility of each individual veteran for the therapy, they would go out into the private sector and gain a full-time job. It's a wonderful concept in theory. In the implementation, from our experience in New Jersey with the VA, it's been difficult. But the VA looked at our landscape training program and authorized it to be included as part of the Compensated Work Therapy program. So that allowed veterans, unemployed veterans, to earn a stipend from the VA while they were in compensated work therapy. They attended the lectures, and then they practiced the horticultural techniques on the property, whether it was mowing lawns, installing rain gardens, managing the public gardens, the landscape at the entry of the building, and even to managing the vegetable gardens that had been installed as part of the gardening program. And this made sense because we had seen the curriculum that the Rutgers Master Gardener the curriculum was based on the Rutgers Master Gardener curriculum. And we at Rutgers, and I'm sure other people in Cooperative Extension who run Master Gardener programs, have seen volunteers take our training, complete the training, practice as a volunteer, and then start new careers in horticulture. We've had people, senior citizens or older people, middle-aged, seek new careers in landscape design and maintenance. And even I've had personally in Essex County 3 individuals complete the Master Gardener training program and then go on to seek certification as horticultural therapists. And 2 people who are former Master Gardeners have gone into urban agriculture. So in our discussions with the VA, they saw the experience of the Master Gardeners, some of whom would go out and start new careers, as a model that was worth trying at the VA hospital. And we were hoping that some of the veterans would then start their new careers. And in fact, after the very first, very rudimentary class of 10 sessions in the evening class, one veteran had gone out and established his own landscape maintenance company for the community of East Orange that surrounds the hospital. It's a community that that's down on its heels. It's an older urban community. I've driven through it 15 years. Never would have thought there was an opportunity there, but the veteran lived in the community, and he was able to establish a landscape maintenance company, very successful one, where he hired other people, other veterans to work with him. And after 5 years, he sold his company and bought a farm and moved to Virginia. So there was anecdotal evidence that horticulture could provide an opportunity for a veteran to start a new career and be successful in the civilian sector. So we began with a lot of enthusiasm. In this slide, you'll see the raised beds that where vegetables are grown. We took over a lot of space between buildings. And then in the right-hand side is a picture of a rain garden that's being installed at the downhill end of a large parking lot. And much more importantly is in the lower left-hand corner is the word fireworks, and that's a link that doesn't work. And that's my only joke for today. I hope my only joke, intentional anyway. It's a link that doesn't work because metaphorically, this compensated work therapy did not work as well as we had planned. Despite a demonstrated improvement in the stormwater management, the VA was unable to fund the landscaping training program. I found money at the county level to cover my expenses if it was not a very expensive program. But the VA, because of changes in policy beyond or outside of New Jersey, was not able to budget for this training program. The EPA Region 1, New England, was very interested in this program. The VA in New England was very interested. Amy Rowe was invited up to New England a couple of times to describe the training program and explain how it could operate for the VA in the New England area. The EPA Region 2, New York, New Jersey, has not yet shown much interest in this program at all. For the 5 years that we were running the training program at the VA, we trained approximately 44 veterans. That number does not include the first class where we had the one veteran who started his own landscaping company. But of those 44, few men went out and started their own small lawn maintenance companies. But the reality is that many of the veterans in the VA system view CWT, compensated work therapy, as a permanent part-time job. They have no interest in pursuing mastering the skills and taking those skills into the private sector. It's disheartening to us. There's some very talented veterans that we interacted, we trained, we know. They're great people, but motivation to become self-employed or employed in the private sector was not great. And so between the VA not having a stable funding base for us, it took sometimes 2 years to be reimbursed for expenses from the VA, the fact that there was no institutional support, and that we were working with a pool of veterans within the VA who had come to see CWT as sort of their right part-time work. We started looking in 2012 for a way to offer the program to veterans outside of the VA. There were other restrictions. The VA would not let us work with veterans to do the landscaping in a county park or at a school off-site. And so some of our training requirements were restricted by the VA's own rules. The training opportunities on the grounds were not sufficient, and then the funding wasn't really there. So we decided to look elsewhere. And we were not making very much progress until we happened to be contacted by a representative of a consortium of companies that were obligated to clean up the Passaic River, which is a Superfund cleanup site. And our conversations began in 2012, while we're still working at the VA, and from our conversations with the private corporations, 70 corporations, the Rutgers Veterans Environmental Technology and Solutions program was born. It's a green jobs training program. We focus on introducing veterans to landscaping and urban agriculture as career opportunities, and we work with a professor from the Rutgers Business School to teach entrepreneurship. The idea is that we're trying to encourage ownership of businesses. Some people may have that, may be born into a family where they learn to be owners. I wasn't, so we believe it's a skill that could be taught, and in the right circumstances, some of the veterans would be able to start their own businesses. The genesis of this program was that the corporations were interested in piloting an aquaponics project, raising fish in the city of Newark. Sounds like a great way to introduce a new protein source. There were complications because there are some people still fishing in the Passaic River and they're eating contaminated fish. And the idea, very briefly, was that we would exchange river-caught contaminated fish for the clean, healthy fish that were raised in the aquaponics project. But they had no sense of who would do the fish farm, and if it was a business venture, who would run the business. And in conversations with the group, we suggested that veterans be trained to raise the fish, and also to do restoration of the river, the environmental restoration, replanting. And from those conversations, the Rutgers Vets program, it took us a while to come up with a nifty acronym. So the name is a little bit awkward, but it fits pretty well. It's easy for folks to remember us. And this is our website. We've benefited from the Superfund cleanup site of the Passaic River. I don't know if anyone believes in karma, but one of the contaminants in the river is Agent Orange from during the Vietnam War. We're not involved in the cleanup of the river, but there's a lot of education about the watershed that needs to be done, and the Rutgers vets, the students in our program, help spread the word to the public about the cleanup of the river, hazards of eating fish, and also what can be done to improve the river and reintegrate that river, which was historically important in the formation of the country. It was important to the early industrial revolution in the 1800s. And we now have a veterans training program that's linked to the river. And for Amy and I, we originally were thinking of the natural landscape. We've worked with an organic land care training program at Rutgers. We wanted to introduce, we have a strong connection to the landscaping industry. We're hoping that these veterans would be able to establish their own companies, compete for some of the contracts that will be available for the restoration of the river. And we were looking for someone to run the program. We had our day jobs. And there was a Rutgers student, Matthew Smith, who is the gentleman with his elbow up, the white guy in the left-hand corner of the picture. He's a recent Rutgers graduate from the School of Agriculture, Environmental Sciences. He was interested in food production, and we were able to hire him as our program coordinator. And he brought his expertise in agriculture to our program. So we broadened from beginning as a program focused on aquaponics and landscaping, which are sort of a weird mix, to a full-fledged urban agriculture program with some landscaping on the side. The private agency, the private corporations have funded us in total, I believe it's close to $2.7 million. The largest portion of that budget, there was about $750,000 in infrastructure, including the construction of a new greenhouse for us and the installation of the fish tanks. But the largest segment of that budget is stipends. We provide stipends. Veterans are with us Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, and they are expected to do classroom work, participate in our activities. And if you've been unemployed and you have pressure paying the rent or child support or any of the other normal expenses that an individual has in our society, it's really hard to take time off and rethink a career, relearn skills, learn new skills. And so what we found is a very important part of our program is the ability to provide $12 an hour stipend while they're in the training program. We pay while they're in classrooms and while they're also in the field. And this is our website that's supported by and was developed by the corporations that help fund us. So in 2014 was our first class. We launched it. We had 15 veterans, 9 to 5. We're located in Newark. We had a really nifty logo. We still use the logo. And we focused on, the first year, mostly sustainable agriculture, stormwater management, and entrepreneurship. We added, towards the end of the first class, some agriculture when we brought on Matt Smith. One of the stipulations was that we have veterans from Essex County. It was important that cleanup of the Passaic River benefits the communities that were damaged by the pollution. And so we recruited at community colleges through New Jersey Department of Labor and some other community service organizations. We had 33 applicants for our first class. We interviewed everyone for an hour. We settled on the class of 15. And we were sort of vagabonds. Our site wasn't done. We moved around Rutgers facilities, county facilities, first 3 or 4 weeks while we were waiting for our training facility to open. And this is our first class. They're in Brookdale Park where they did they planted 20 new dogwood trees as part of their training. What's I think really important is, along with the classroom instruction that we provide, and we have Rutgers faculty and staff, Rutgers faculty from the agricultural school support us, the agricultural agents from across the state support us. We also have local contacts in the green industries come teach classes. That's all important. It gives the veterans a solid understanding of the green industries available to them, but we also have them engage in the community. They support community gardens. Our greenhouse, where the fish are, the aquaponics system, the fish poop is recycled, and we're producing collards, kale, spinaches in the greenhouse. That food is given to the church. Our site is located at a community food bank and community center of the Metropolitan Baptist Church of Newark. So we've been able to donate about 5,000 pounds annually to their soup kitchen and food bank. We produce seedlings that are available to local schools and communities, gardeners. We've trained the veterans to develop rain barrels, recycle barrels, so that they can help recover wastewater, stormwater runoff. And we're working in a lot of the county parks, practicing the skills in the classroom and then benefiting their communities. The other thing we're providing, I think is probably more important, is we're engaging the local green industry. We're bringing in professionals, business owners who may be interested in hiring. We've had success. We've had local landscapers hire our veterans. We had one veteran in last year's class move to Maryland to work in a composting operation that was started by a veteran in Maryland. We've had some success, and it's mostly breaking down the barriers between the veteran, whether they're self-imposed or not, and the industry representative. So the networking opportunities that our program provides are proving very important. Another part of our program they think is important, and this goes to the role of extension in urban communities. I'm sure I won't find much sympathy in the audience to hear that we don't have much money from Rutgers or the state, and we have a lot of programming we're trying to develop. And so we have integrated the veterans in the Rutgers vets students into cooperative extension programs in Essex County. They support the Family and Community Health Sciences Department. They support the 4-H program. They're helping us deliver, giving value-added product back to the county and the diverse communities that we work in. And while they're doing that, they get the experience of interacting with the public, which will help them in any career. They practice public speaking. They're learning to be professional. They see what it means to be professional, not to be a soldier, but to be a professional in the civilian world. And they're learning to listen to people. That's a skill that we're only coming to really appreciate as we get more experience. Me, personally, working in extension, I'm always trying to improve my skills of listening. And the veterans have to practice listening to the public because they're able then to respond to the public and deliver programs. We have an urban youth farm in the suburb of Newark of Montclair. It's been an ongoing 4-H project, and it's been strengthened by the involvement of veterans working there, not just physically doing the labor to maintain the garden, but also interacting with children, becoming role models for the children. This is the inside of our greenhouse. These are the hydroponic troughs. I don't believe I've added a photo of the fish tanks. They're two of our veterans from last year's class are getting ready to harvest lettuce that's going to be then taken 50 feet to the food banks and soup kitchen that's right next to us. Those blue tanks in the background are where we're raising a couple hundred tilapia. One of the veterans came up with a better idea for how to manage the waste of the fish. Even though we're recycling through the aquaponics, or nutrients are being absorbed by the plants, we're still letting some of the nutrients go back out into the storms, into the sanitary source. And one of our veterans last year was working on a project, and he's continuing this year to try to capture that waste, that fish manure, to create a marketable fertilizer. So that's an example of some of the entrepreneurship we're encouraged. We don't have a model in mind for what people should be doing. We give them the time and the space to explore their options. We have veterans going out in the community teaching classes. We have a great demand for composting and gardening classes. Master gardeners do a great job. And we have Rutgers vets in their uniforms going out representing Rutgers Cooperative Extension and themselves and helping us deliver programs. And it's really improved the visibility of Extension in the community. 4-H was a natural ally. We have a great program assistant in 4-H who's involved in urban agriculture, and she's trained the veterans on how to teach children and provide leadership to children. We have the county has built a brand new children's garden and then said, here, manage it. So the veterans adopted that and really got the kids involved. We're moving into our second year. It's really great to see kids interacting with veterans. It's helping the veterans reconnect, learn to communicate with kids, and master those skills that will help them reconnect to their communities. Here's some pictures of us working in the county park, Brookdale, where we're planting dogwood trees. We've done a lot of grunt work in the parks, but we've also done design work. The county appreciates that, and we have helped them maintain a county park system that's stressed by overuse and low funding, underfunding. Another really important aspect of our project is the veterans have been establishing community gardens. They will work with people who already have a community garden and need work, but this is a community garden that they created a block and a half from our site. It was a space that was populated by local drug dealers storing their product, and it was litter strewn. We're now in our third year of maintaining that garden. The neighborhood has been welcoming of it, and some of the neighbors work in the garden beds that we've created. So we brought a new resource to the community. We helped in some small way with some of the crime in the area. And we have, there's an annual event, Community Harvest Festival, that the veterans decided to offer to the community. It was not an idea. Amy is the young woman in the red shirt in the front of the picture with the probably Philadelphia Eagles hat. She and I did not come up with this idea. It was the veterans. They wanted to engage the community. It's to see the energy they have. They live in the community, a lot of them nearby, and they understand the community, its challenges, and it's been heartening to see them re-engage and come out of their shells. We have them working in schools. This is Rodney Spencer, who's a third-year intern with us. He's a staff position. He started with us in the first class. We needed help, and we offered him an internship last year, and now he's a Rutgers staff person who supports the greenhouse, and is very interested in introducing city kids to gardening, and so he takes any opportunity he can to teach in the school. The other thing is we've made it fun. We go out, and this is at the site of a national park in Paterson, New Jersey, the Great Falls of the Passaic River. These are opportunities where people can be free and relax and appreciate some resource that's very close. It's only a few miles from Newark. Half of that class had not been there or even known that the park existed. We create the space for these veterans to think about what they want to do with the next step in their lives. So I'm going to wrap up. I think I'm running low on time, but what do the veterans bring to the program? They have the ability to follow directions, familiarity with physical labor and inclement weather. It's handy when you're working in agriculture. They also bring a history of substance abuse, PTSD. They're used to being told what to do. I always believed that a ex-military person would be a great employee. They are, if you tell them what to do. It makes sense. The military wants soldiers to do what they're told, and that's what you do in the military. You don't challenge your officer by thinking that you have a better way to do things. That doesn't fly in the military. It is a skill that's appreciated in the private sector more, to be able to think independently and problem solve. That was something that caught us off guard when we began to work with the veterans. Homelessness. They're unemployed veterans or underemployed veterans. Homelessness is a challenge for us. If a person's worried about where they're going to sleep, they're not able to concentrate on the job of learning. And we were caught flat-footed once or twice because we didn't understand what somebody was going through, one of the veterans was going through when they were not in our program. Domestic violence, lack of communication, being in a violent situation in the military. Domestic violence is a problem. We've had to direct veterans in our program to social services at the VA and at the Rutgers School of Social Work to help mitigate tensions in their family. And the other thing that really shocked us was when we provided the first paycheck, very few people were able to cash the check. In the veterans that we work with in Newark, in Essex County, most, 75, maybe 80%, do not have a checking account, do not have a bank account. So they're outside of the financial system looking in. Doesn't matter if they have a full-time job. They don't have any solid foundation to their personal finances. So we've had to add personal finance as part of our curriculum. It's hard to imagine somebody thinking about becoming a business owner when they have a hard time paying their own bills or cashing a check or saving money. So those are all skills that can be learned, and we're working with Rutgers Cooperative Extension faculty and from the Family and Community Health Sciences section, Barbara O'Neill, who's a financial consultant and planner who's done education in personal finance. We're working with her and local banks and credit unions to provide that training. Something that we didn't think of when we thought we had a nice, cool idea to start a landscape training program. So what we realize now is that job training is the least important thing that we offer. We give veterans space to come together, think. They might become the owner of a laundromat after our program. That would be great. We've given them the space to learn and think about what they want to do. Unemployed veterans need an income during the training, and that is the biggest, most difficult challenge for us facing our fourth year. And there are programs out there, federal dollars, but cooperative extension, at least Rutgers, the way we're structured, we're not eligible to collect on the be able to have the GI Bill education benefits come to us to pay for the programming. There's a veteran rehab program where veterans can take the dollars and go to a technical training school or community college, but they don't come to a four-year university. So we're limited in some regards to where we can look for funding. And the biggest challenge too is most of the enlisted veterans that we're meeting, they like the idea of being self-employed, but they're not self-starters. And it's a real challenge if we're going to try to encourage somebody to become an entrepreneur. I guess I'm reiterating some things here. Military service is not sufficient preparation for civilian employment. Our program needs stronger connections to the social and medical services that are available to veterans. We know it now. After 3 years, we're still learning that there are other services out there and there are professionals that can work with veterans. There is a strong interest in the local industry here, the landscaping industry, to hire veterans. What we've discovered is not all the veterans have cars. And so in the Northeast, where public transit is hit or miss, transportation out to the suburbs where the jobs are, where the income is, fancy landscapes and mansions, and we have a hard time providing, we can get a veteran hired, but how does that person commute to the work? We are making progress. There's a bit of hope for us. We've had interest from the New Jersey Assembly Military and Veterans Affairs Committee. They've endorsed our training model. Shocked a few people at Rutgers Cooperative Extension because they were thinking, wow, this should be offered at community colleges. Rutgers is in 20 of the 21 counties in New Jersey. And so there is a potential for us to offer this training through the community colleges. It might even free up some of the dollars through the GI Bill education benefits. The New Jersey State Agricultural Committee is asking the New Jersey Department of Agriculture and USDA to come tour our facility in the next 3 weeks and to review the program for ways to make it sustainable. And again, we have the state legislature, state assembly, and the state senate interested in this program. We started modestly. We've had some modest success, and we're hoping it to grow. And then at the local level, we're finding that the Essex County Administration has interest in continuing to use the county parks as a training facility or a training site, practice tree pruning, planting, lawn maintenance for the veterans, and that they might be able to tap into state or federal dollars for job training that we're not able to tap into. So that in the long run will be helping us make our program more sustainable. And then importantly, I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer. And I've learned to listen to the community where I worked. I don't think this program would be here. I know it wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for Thurston who's the retired U.S. Air Force veteran who was a master gardener who was persistent. He loves gardening. He kind of thinks it's a cure for everything, and he works with young vets and old vets. He's still plugging away, promoting it. And that's my talk. If there's time, I'll answer questions.
Thanks so much, Jan. You know, we are at the end of our hour. So
I started my timer too late. I apologize.
Oh, but it was a full and interesting hour, so thank you. Thank you very much, but I'm hoping that people can contact you at your email if they have additional questions. Would that
Certainly.
be okay?
Certainly. Oh, yeah,
all right.
Definitely.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you all as well for participating in the webinar today, which was offered at no charge through the support of contributing members to the Western Center for Metropolitan Extension and Research. This webinar has been recorded and will be available next week on the Western Center website, metroextension.wsu.edu, and that's where you can also find Jan's contact information. The Center holds monthly webinars, and we hope you'll join us for our next webinar on July 21st, where for Competency in the City, when Julie Fox from The Ohio State University will explore the knowledge, skills, and abilities that extension professionals need to serve our metropolitan communities. Go to the WCMER website, metroextension.wsu.edu, to register for the webinar and to join our mailing list. Once you exit this webinar, we will launch a brief survey so we can find out what you thought of the webinar today. Please take a moment to fill it out and make sure to tell us what you would like to learn about in future webinars. That concludes our webinar for June 2016. On behalf of the Western Center for Metropolitan Extension and Research and our presenter, Jan Zentek, I thank you for joining us. Happy summer, everybody. We'll be with you again in July. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Martha, are you still there?